What's up, everyone? Ben with the BTC Sessions here, and this is your daily session.
HODL Bitcoin.
Before we dive in, just a couple quick things. Of course, do check out my website, btcsessions.ca. This is where you can reach out to me personally and book your own BTC session. Really, we can choose the topic of your choice, whether it be you're a brand newcomer to Bitcoin and you want to learn about setting up a wallet, how to receive and send transactions properly. Maybe you've been around for a while and want to set up a hardware wallet and figure out proper security. Or maybe you just want a tutorial on basic Bitcoin infrastructure and how the underlying technology works. In any case, you can simply scroll to the bottom of the page. There's a contact form for you there. And secondly, big shout out to sponsors of the show, Ledn.io. This is where you can use your Bitcoin to access a couple of different services, one of which is a Bitcoin-backed Canadian dollar or US dollar loan. So essentially, you can head here and there's an application process. It takes a couple minutes to fill out. There is no credit check. And if you're approved, then your bank account is typically funded within around 24 hours. I've done this myself a couple times and it worked like a charm. So if you're looking to get your hands on dollars but would not like to sell your Bitcoin to do so, this could be an option for you. And secondly, they just launched their own Bitcoin savings account. Now, I've not taken part in this as of yet, but I have heard of a couple people that actually watch the show that have been playing around with it, and they seem to have had a fine experience with it as well. You essentially can accumulate monthly compounded interest. And the interest is not paid out in dollars. It is indeed paid out in Bitcoin. So take a look. This could be for you, and it just depends on your kind of risk-reward appetite. So obviously, in any instance, if somebody is a custodian of your Bitcoin, you are not guaranteed to get it back until you actually withdraw. But Ledn does indeed have insured custody. So if something does happen, you do have insurance there. So take a look. I highly recommend you check these guys out. Working with them has been wonderful, and I really appreciate their support on the show. And with that, let's dive into the news. So we're going to take a quick peek at the price, kind of where it was over the weekend and where it could potentially be headed. So we did have this pump kind of before the weekend that we spoke about where it went up above 9K very briefly and then just got smacked down and a huge reversal. We've since recovered a little bit from then, but we've been dipping down again. So we did get back up to the $8,800 range very briefly. It's since kind of come back down. At the time of recording this, we're sitting above 8,500. We've been kind of in the 84, 8,500 range for most of the morning here. But let's take a look at the chart. There are a number of things that seem to lean towards being bearish in the short to mid term here. So essentially, we hit what is known as and I'll see if I can find, there we go, the Rickshaw Man Doji. And so it's essentially when the weekly chart shows that you are starting the week and ending the week at essentially the same price, despite a large amount of movement in between. So we more or less didn't go anywhere in the last week. And actually this week we've started to see lows. We've gone lower than the previous week. So what does this typically mean? It means there's some indecision in the market. So both the bulls and the bears haven't been able to decisively move the price in any single direction. And so this could denote either a bullish or bearish sentiment moving forward. On the bearish side, we could be seeing a reversal. So we kind of have to watch this week to see what happens, to see what kind of a pattern is playing out here. Because if we end the week lower, especially with a long kind of red candle where we end decisively lower than we started the week, then that would denote a price reversal and some bearish movement over the next little bit. And what kind of prices might we be looking at for support? Well, on the lower end, we could first see around 81.30. We could see around 75.30, or even down to around $7,000. And that's if we continue down that path. On the upside, we've already kind of discussed this in other shows, but of course, getting past that 9K mark is something that we need to do before we see any major moves beyond that. 96, 9,500, that range, there might be some resistance there. 10K is a psychological level, and beyond that, there's not a whole lot of resistance moving past. If we get decisively past 10K, it's looking like kind of like 1100, 11.5 is kind of where the next resistance lies. Sorry, not 1100, 11,000, 11,005. Somewhere in there lies a bunch of resistance that we could bump up against. But really, we have to see how this week plays out to see where we could be headed. This is why I enjoy being a hodler instead of trading, is because none of this particularly worries me. I'm waiting long-term, years, before really worrying about where price is headed. This is a long-term play for me, but I do enjoy kind of looking at potential price targets so that if either instance ends up playing out, I'm not particularly surprised, and I'm a little bit more level-headed, and I'm not worried or making rash decisions. Now, I did want to touch on something in regards to the market as a whole. I'm talking about the entire cryptocurrency market. And it's not that I particularly care about other coins, because I'm heavily leaning Bitcoin maximalist, more or less. But I have a Telegram group that we started, and oh, by the way, if you're not in the Telegram group, I will include a link down below. Be sure to check it out. Really, it's just a place to shoot the shit, talk about whatever we feel like, and I do let people in there know when a video is going live and stuff like that. But more or less, it's just for fun chat. And so we got into the topic of, what does the next bull run look like? What happens? Is it just all Bitcoin and the altcoins kind of fall away, or is there another mania? And given kind of what we've seen this year, I really do think we haven't seen our .com style bubble yet. I don't think we've seen even close to the amount of mania we will see in the future, the irrationality that we'll see in the future. I think that coming up, and it could take a while, it could be a couple years before we really see this, but I think we will see more or less a repeat of the .com boom and subsequent bust. And when I say that, I mean companies and coins and other items, even just actual stocks that have anything to do with the blockchain space, being pumped beyond all reason, and essentially offering complete vaporware and absolutely nothing of value, things that don't make sense, just being worth billions and billions of dollars. I think that we saw a little bit of that last time around. Now, we did see there's an iced tea company that added blockchain to their name, and the stock price, I think, doubled or tripled. It was something stupid like that. But I think we'll see a lot more of that. Not only that, but we'll see more ICOs, whether they're legal or not. They'll still be around, and people will still be more than happy to dump money into them. I think we'll see a lot of irrational altcoins that come out of nowhere, that offer incremental improvements over other protocols, saying, hey, we're the next one, and they'll pump like crazy. We'll continue to see IEOs, which is a new thing that's been popping up. It's not a new thing. It's an ICO, but it's an initial exchange offering where an exchange offers their own token, hoping to capitalize on the success of Binance's coin and repeat it for themselves. But I think we'll see plenty of those. And STOs, securities tokens offering, essentially taking a stock, and instead of issuing it on something like the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, actually having it be a securities token, and that's really the only difference. So it's blockchain-based token that represents actual stock in a company. I think those will pump like crazy. I think others will pump like crazy for no reason other than blockchain. When shit hits the fan and goes wrong, I think it's a lot of people are really gonna get wiped out and really, really hurt. And I'm talking even people that may dive into Bitcoin in the midst of that crazy rally, because they won't be able to decipher between the value propositions. Like, why is Bitcoin valuable? Why is something else not? I think we're gonna see a lot of that, a lot of crazy stuff. And the people that dive in later will probably obviously be hurt the most because they'll be FOMOing in at the peak of the absolute crazy bull run. And I think it'll be worse than the last time around. I mean, the people that are around now and have been around for a few years, you've kind of seen it all and are they're more likely to be able to weather the storm. But last time around, even in Canada, they had some polls here in Ontario and other provinces where they wanted to find out how many people actually have ever owned cryptocurrency. And the number came in around 5%, which I thought was impressively high considering. But that means 95% of people have not dabbled at all. And I guarantee out of that 5%, most of them probably, played around, put in like $20 or $50 or some small amount, and we're just dabbling. But I think we have a lot more craziness to see way beyond that. And it'll be interesting. So be careful out there. But I think it could be a little while before we see that. Regardless, safety hats on. So let's move on here. This Bitmex is set to reduce Bitcoin fees with liquid sidechain and Segwit, and not in the title here, and transaction batching. So what does this mean? What are we talking about? Essentially, Bitcoin fees, given that block space is scarce, Bitcoin fees can be heavily impacted by large companies like Bitmex, like Coinbase, like plenty of other exchanges that don't utilize the Bitcoin blockchain in an efficient manner. And what I mean is, let's take the example of transaction batching. With a company that has a lot of individuals that they need to send payments out to via Bitcoin, the most efficient way to do that is batching your transactions, which means you have a pool of Bitcoin and you construct one single transaction where you say, I'm going to pay these thousands of people all at once from this pool of Bitcoin in a single transaction. So you say, okay, ready, I've got this Bitcoin, and boom, out to everybody all at once. Well, Bitmex and Coinbase are both not doing this. What they're doing is they're saying, oh, there's a person we need to pay them once. Single transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain. Pay this person once. Pay this person once. And it's just going out person to person. In fact, we can really see it when Bitmex does it because they do it all manually and then they dump all the transactions at once on the Bitcoin blockchain. So here's a graph of Bitcoin fees, and you can see all of a sudden Bitmex dumped 7 megabytes worth of transactions, which is thousands and thousands of transactions all at once to basically for withdrawals from their platform. And you can see the fees completely spike and are massive for the rest of the day. Part of the symptom of this is their practices, and secondly, it's wallet software that doesn't understand how to deal with high transaction fees or how to interpret them. And so you get instances where it's just stupidly expensive because of poor maintenance of how large companies are doing their transactions. In fact, as quoted, now this was brought to us from a tweet storm from the CEO of BitRefill, and he went on to say that just transaction batching alone would have reduced the impact of this by 90%. It would have barely been a blip on the radar when it comes to impacting the fees. But because it wasn't transaction batching, look what happens. Every user of Bitcoin is impacted by this. And so not only this, but adding Segwit, which again reduces fees because of the way that transactions are structured. And they're talking about utilizing the liquid sidechain. And essentially, this is a way of pegging something to Bitcoin and being able to transact quickly and cheaply without having to utilize the actual Bitcoin blockchain. And this could be useful in exchange-to-exchange transfers. So say Bitmex wants to send to another large company or vice versa. Well, they no longer have to use the Bitcoin blockchain itself. They could be using this as an alternative if need be. So what do I think will happen here? Honestly, I think that in the short term, it sucks because everybody has to deal with this poor usage. But eventually, companies will have to figure out and actually start using Bitcoin efficiently. Why? Well, let's think about what happens when they don't. So in this instance, Bitmex is sending out a ton of transactions, and one of two things are happening depending on what their policies may be. One is they front the fees themselves, which they've just screwed themselves because they have to pay ridiculous fees after they fill up the first block. And so they're paying a ton of fees because of this. Or two, they push the fees onto the users. And so what happens there? Well, the user gets screwed because a bigger chunk of their Bitcoin gets taken away because of high fees and the poor usage. But then what does the user do in turn? If the user sees this consistently and they notice that other Bitcoin companies and exchanges are having better practices where they actually are optimizing the fees, well, eventually, if it gets bad enough, that person migrates to the better service. And so in both instances, you see that the companies that are executing poorly either go out of business or have to change their practices to attract customers back, or they screw themselves by ending up paying too much and it takes a big chunk of their bottom line and they still end up implementing these down the road. So I think it will be a self-correcting mechanism, but I think that it has to hurt a little bit more before that happens. So it will sort itself, but I encourage you all to consider how you're utilizing Bitcoin in each particular transaction so that you understand whether you should be attaching large fees or not. So typically, I like to use this website, bitcoinfees.earn.com, and I'll include that down below. But along the side here, the reason I find it most useful is I can see what fee I should attach depending on how quickly I want to get things through. So it's Monday, and odds are we probably had a Bitmex dump at some point today. So that's why fees are particularly high right now. So like your next block fee, to get into the next block, you're looking at like 200 Satoshis per byte, which is historically pretty high. However, if you're not in a rush, let's say you have some Bitcoin in a hot wallet and you want to put it in cold storage on a Trezor or a Ledger or a cold card or whatever you're doing, and it's going to sit there for months and months before you ever consider taking it out or spending it or doing something with it, well, put a low fee. Like realistically, you could throw in like a 10 Satoshi per byte fee. It doesn't matter if it takes a few days to clear. Who cares? It's going to be sitting there for weeks and months or whatever. It's not necessary to waste your Satoshis on a high fee for that. You can also use wallets that institute something called RBF, which is replaced by fee. And in the instance that you decide, crap, I need that to go through quicker than I had planned because something has changed, well, then you can bump the fee after the fact. In fact, you should always be using RBF and use super low fees. And then if you find that you need to bump your fee, then do it. But why waste money unnecessarily? Try a lower fee. If you're waiting around and it starts to become time intensive, then bump the fee. And so you can do that, I believe, with Samurai Wallet, which is only Android. You can do that with Blockstream Green, which is a revamp of the old Green wallet, which is I've found to be pretty great. And I believe you can do that with HODL Wallet too, HODL Wallet, and that's available on both iOS and Android. Same with Blockstream Green. So I would check those out if you want to start to become a Bitcoin Power user. And I've done videos on them. I'll link those here in the cards as well. Now, a couple last things here. So Localbitcoins has removed cash for crypto trading options. So essentially, Localbitcoins enables you to link up with local people and either online or in person trade Bitcoin for cash. Well, not anymore, at least not apparently for US customers. It's unclear whether this is across the rest of the world or not. But essentially, they've removed the option entirely to meet up in person. And so why? They have said that they're going to comply with some regulations coming out of Europe. So the European Union's new anti-money laundering directive. So this is unfortunate for users of Localbitcoins. However, I'm sure that this will only drive more decentralized solutions moving forward. And so, as we've seen with Bitcoin in the past, every time somebody puts up a roadblock, somebody just routes around it with another solution. So there's been decentralized exchanges like BISC that have popped up, and plenty of others. And I think that'll just drive more liquidity to them in the future. So interesting to see, but also good. Honestly, when I see news like this, I typically look at it as, okay, good. So now that issue can be addressed. So yeah, initially not great, but long-term good. Before I sign off here, anybody that's in Calgary, or if you have some newcomers to Bitcoin that are in Calgary that might be interested, I am holding a workshop on June 20th here in Calgary. And I will be, it is a paid event. There are only 4 spots left. I'm trying to keep classes very, very small so I get kind of more one-on-one time. And it's all about that initial step into Bitcoin. So how do I actually use a wallet? How do I securely keep and back up my wallet? How do I send and receive transactions? What are some buying and selling processes? How do I avoid high fees when I'm buying and selling? Some other do's and do nots. Basically getting people primed to use Bitcoin well, and just kind of learn their way around a wallet and feel that they're not going to make a stupid mistake off the bat. So it is a very, very beginner event. I will link to it down below. Feel free to share it around if you know somebody locally that might be interested. And yeah, I hope to see you there. I'm excited to do this. And I think in the future, I'll probably do some around privacy using things like Wasabi, and perhaps even dive into, proper storage when it comes to long-term savings and cold storage and things like the cold card and Trezor and Ledger and so on and so forth. So anyways, with that, I'm going to sign off here. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, smash that like button, smash the bell notification icon, because every time this airs for the first time, I'm in the side chat chatting everybody up. And if you want to chat after the show, of course, come on over to the Telegram. Remember, links for that are down below. If you really enjoyed what you saw, feel free to drop me a Bitcoin tip via the Lightning Network at my tippin.me page, and I've got a link for that as well. And I'm out, guys. Have a great Monday. Have a great rest of the week. I will see you tomorrow for your daily session.